Hello everyone, and welcome back to We Love PMO, the show where we simplify the complex world of project, program, and PMO management. I'm your host, Sarah, and if this is your first time tuning in today, welcome. Don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any notifications for when a new episode is released. And in today's episode, I'm joined by a special guest, LaShall Dodson, who is the founder of Dedicated Virtual Professional Services. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the role of marketing in relation to product launches within a project environment, the role quality assurance plays, and some of the common mistakes we see when undertaking audits. So, welcome, LaShall.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here today.
We are excited to have you too. So, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business?
Yes, yes. So my name's LaShall Dodson, and my business is Dedicated Virtual Professional Services. And really, I do kind of a mixture of OBM work, so that's online business management work, and then marketing, specifically in regards to Facebook and Instagram ads management.
Right. Okay. Um, so because we're going to talk a bit about marketing and stuff like that today. I just wanted to, would you be able to just sort of discuss with us and just tell us a bit about, in the context of new product launches, how do you see marketing's role integrated within the overall project management process?
Yeah, so really I see it's kind of like there's four different pillars really that I kind of see that kind of integrate that role. There's the marketing insight, right? The marketing team can really bring a lot of insight to any project. There's also shaping the messaging, right? Before we get too far into a launch, we want to make sure that we're kind of on the same page. We have our messaging shaped in the way that we want to present it to the public, right? The public facing message. And then executing the launch with strategy. So having strategy behind the launch and knowing what goals, common goal we want to accomplish is really key. And then I think the fourth thing is making sure you are looking at your target audience. And if you're designing something special for that audience, you want to make sure that what you're launching and what you're putting out there really resonates with them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Strategy is so important when you're having a look at sort of product development, and also, as you said there, that messaging and understanding what your target audience is. So it actually it makes sense to them. They're understanding what's coming their way, and like you said there, that it really kind of resonates with them and sort of gets that kind of buy-in from them as well.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. You've really honed in on that. So yeah, I have a couple questions for you.
Perfect.
So what exactly is a product health audit and why is it valuable for identifying gaps in product development?
Yeah, so project health audits, they are really essential because they're like a structured review process and they're designed to kind of assess like how well is the project progressing. And that's in relation to its original goals, its timelines, its budget, and also from its scope and quality standards. Some people sort of think of it a bit like a diagnostic checkup, a bit like if you were taking your car in for an MOT, and just having a look how your project's doing. And it deep dives into various elements to sort of understand, lifting up the bonnet, what's not working well, what is working well, and where are things off track. And when it comes to that product development, specifically, project health audits are really, really invaluable because it allows teams to understand and potentially catch any issues really early on. And so, for example, a good one would be in regards to like certain features aren't meeting the quality standards, or perhaps the product requirements aren't in alignment with what was originally captured when the project went through its requirement gathering stage. And that's particularly essential, especially as we're looking at development timelines as they're slipping. So these types of audits bring those issues to light so that they can be addressed really quickly.
Awesome. So how often should project health audits be conducted during a project lifecycle and who typically leads those in the audit?
So it really depends on the type of project and its complexity, and also how long is that project going to be running for, and any specific risks. So as a kind of general kind of rule, it's really good practice to sort of have these audits at key milestones throughout the project life cycle. So initial audit might take place after like the scoping and planning phase, just to ensure that that project's been set up correctly and it's on track for success. Midway through the project's a really good time to do that as well, because that just checks and verifies that everything is still aligned with the original plan. Is it still justifiable? Is it still viable? Are we still in alignment with those strategic objectives or the objectives of the individual's business if you're looking from a solopreneur perspective? And then also, as we towards the end of the completion, checking that all those deliverables are on track and to meet the quality and client standards. And as for who would lead those, project health audits are typically led by a member of like the PMO, and especially if the PMO includes a quality assurance function. So PMOs professionals are really, really well placed because they're both independent. They're sort of like a third party, so they're really invested, but they're not like deep down in the weeds of it. And it's not, if, whether it delivers or not, it's not going to have that impact on them. So they've kind of got a outsider's view, and they understand the objectives and the mandate as well. So they really take the lead on the audit, and they have that objectivity and a more sort of standardized approach, and they can highlight, what are those kind of findings, and sort of help provide a bit of an action plan for people to sort of undertake to try and get things back on track.
Yeah, that's awesome. And really, I can't agree more. Those project health audits are so important. And like you said, so important at doing them at every stage of the way too.
So I'm sure that you've probably, especially within sort of marketing and with your background as well, it's very similar to mine. You have a lot of background in sort of marketing. So what's some of the most effective ways that you've seen for marketing and project management teams to set shared objectives to ensure, that product's launch is successful?
Yeah, I really think that the very first thing, the very first suggestion I would have for anyone on that is clear lines of communication, right? Because you're going to have several different teams and hands in the pot at the same time. You really want to make sure there's a clear line of communication so that everybody kind of knows what they're doing, what pieces of the puzzle they're working on, and kind of how to move that forward. The other big picture item that everybody needs to be in tune with is, what is the objective that we're trying to reach? What is the end goal? And when I sit and do anything marketing, I always start with what is the end goal of my client, right? What are they looking for? Are they looking for leads? Are they looking for awareness? What is that piece that they're looking for? And then I build backwards to that. So, and part of doing that, like if you're looking at for example, a campaign, you're going to build backwards by then clearly defining all of the specific goals for that objective. So if my end goal is to get clients and bring leads, I'm not going to run an awareness campaign, right? I really want to hone in on what that objective is, make sure that marketing and the project management team both understand that, because it's important as the product management team builds out, everything, all of the tools and things. And it's also very important. The next thing that's very important for them to understand and be on the same page with is timeline and budget. We all have to be working towards the same timeline, because if we're not, something's going to be amiss, right? we
Absolutely.
yeah. So we all, and knowing what the budget is and being able to stick to the budget is just as important as meeting the goals in that timeline.
I like what you were saying there about working backwards, because it was just making me think in regards to I'm a big fan of risk management. One of the techniques that I get a lot of people to use is that pre-mortem analysis, where they visualize the future state, but in the worst case scenario. And then they work backwards from there and try to unpick to work out, well, where are all the pain points, and what can we do to try and put plans in place so we don't actually have that to happen. And another thing you sort of mentioned there as well about communication, that is, regardless of type of work we're talking about. Communication is so important. And what are, in your sort of opinion, like what are some practical ways marketing and project teams can avoid that miscommunication or duplication of efforts during a launch?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's again having that open communication there, whether you're going to use a project management tool or something like that, where you can clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each player on the team. You know, what piece is marketing responsible for? What piece is project management responsible for? And then being open to know that this is a launch or this is whatever kind of, marketing event you're rolling out. Things are going to happen and things are going to change. And just because on paper it says this is your responsibility, it may flip to be another team's responsibility because along the way something happened and we've got to adjust our timeline. And I think that's so important too is being open to knowing that things will change, right? And I think having regular meetings, I like to have meetings once a week when I'm in the middle of a launch, right? I want to make sure all my timelines are on track. I want to make sure everybody's on common ground. So yeah, I would say regular meetings, open communication, collaboration tools, and then really being open to feedback. Because if somebody comes in and says, okay, look, we planned to do this and it was a beautiful plan on paper, but it's just not working or we can't get this to be built exactly like we envisioned. Being open to that feedback, coming together as a team, and then talking through it and figuring out maybe a better next step is really, really important.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you there. And one thing I know a lot of sort of businesses are not that great at doing is to stop and
Mhm.
to say this is not working. We need to either pull the plug or we need to pull resources from other places to, try to overcome these barriers and issues. And what you're saying there in regards to sort of just trying to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page with it as well by making sure those communication channels are open. That kickoff phase, that initial planning phase is so important to make sure that everybody's in agreement of what it is that's trying to, they're trying to create from a product perspective, in order for that to land right. So from a sort of marketing perspective, what factors should be considered during that sort of planning and scoping phase to ensure the launch resonates with its actual target audience?
Yeah, there's some real key areas that should be talked about during that initial meeting, and then you plan them out. But again, know that visions can change, right? Our clients are really good at wanting something in the beginning and then having a little bit different vision as we continue on, right? Um, but really, it's understanding having a clear selling proposition. So you really want to hone in on what you're selling and have that a crystal clear picture of what you're going to be pushing out to the public. You then want to have a deep understanding of your target audience, right? Because you want to understand what their needs are, what their pains are, so that you're really resonating with whatever you're putting out there for them. And then proper timing, right? Is this the right time of year or right day of the week to launch this particular product? You know, would you launch something on Christmas Day in the US? Probably not, you know? So it's having that understanding that proper timing is key. And then also knowing what platforms are you going to do your launch on, right? Where are your clients hanging out? If all of your ideal clients hang out on Facebook, why would you go to TikTok to launch something, right? But
Yeah.
but you have to know that. You have to do that back end research, and pre-launch testing. Pre-launch testing is so important, and not from a technical perspective, but from messaging. And there's so much pre-launch testing that you could do that's costs you no money. You could take your message that you're going to throw out there during your launch and you could be putting that on your social media now to see if people are paying attention to it. Are you getting any engagement? Things like that.
Yeah, that's that. So it's just testing the ground, isn't it? Is what we're creating actually something that's needed, that is wanted in that
Yep.
sort of early sort of stages? And from like, what sort of type of marketing insights or customer needs and market trends would influence that project planning and prioritization stage?
Yeah, I would say I identify with what their pain points are, right? So if you know what your client's pain points are you addressing that need? Right? If you can come back and say, I can fix that pain point for you, that's an awesome selling point. You want to also align with market trends. You want to do some research. You want to go out there and you want to see what other people are doing. What's the current trends, and is it working for people? And if that's working, that's something you want to consider. And then on the flip side, what's not working for people, you also want to know that too.
Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. You want to validate the concept with market research. And that could be just having a little webinar to talk about it, posting something on your story. You could do reels, you could do polls, you could ask, a survey for customer feedback if you've got an email list. There's so many ways we could do that validation.
Brilliant. And that's also kind of gives you that backing evidence as well, doesn't it? Just that question of like, is this still justifiable to do? Is it still viable? And you have that backing there to sort of say, yes, it is, because actually, from the research that we've done from a marketing perspective, this is something people really want and they're invested and they're willing to sort of like, part money or their time in order to have it.
Exactly. Yep. You said it exactly perfect. Yes, yes. So, what are some of the common gaps that project health audits reveal in product development processes?
So yeah, with the project health audits, often they reveal quite a few different gaps that are quite recurring in product development. So one of the most common gaps is in that requirements alignment. So are the features that are being developed, are they actually matching up with those initial project requirements and the user's expectations as well? Checking back through those kind of user stories, like is that actually lining up? And this usually tends to happen when the scope has changed sort of mid-project without any sort of sufficient review or even having documentation in place to sort of check, when we were looking at our products, do we have a clear kind of like acceptance and quality criteria and things like that. Another sort of frequent gap that comes up is about resource allocation. So it quite often uncovers that the key resources, like particular subject matter experts or particular tools that we were using weren't available at the right times, which then has a real impact in regards to products being launched and communication breakdowns. Like we talked about already about communication just being so vital when you're working in these environments. So some sort of things we see is things like team members or departments aren't fully aligned, or there's a duplication of efforts because people are kind of working in silo and actually they're both working on a similar sort of thing. And so identifying these sort of gaps early, it just gives a chance to change onto the right course and just ensuring that that product development process stays really efficient and is aligned, but they're primed for that successful launch as well.
Yeah, so then would you say that incorporating quality assurance into the PMO strength would strengthen the effectiveness of project health audits?
Absolutely, yeah. So incorporating sort of that quality assurance into a PMO, it just adds like an additional layer of that oversight and standardization to those health audits. And the PMO's role, even if you put the QA to a side, is to provide that structure, that governance, that assurance, and consistency across the projects. And by adding in that quality assurance, it just gives you an additional dedicated focus, ensuring that quality has been considered at every stage of the project and product lifecycle. So, with that quality assurance embedded within a PMO, it helps establish really clear quality metrics, benchmarks that can be consistently applied across any projects that are running within that business. So when that audit takes place, the QA standards are kind of built into that project framework as well. So then it makes it a lot easier to assess whether that project meeting those standards. Um, and then if there is any sort of concerns, there's a tailored kind of action plan and strategy for people to overcome those problems that have arisen, to try and make sure that as they come to the point of actually pre-implementation and launching that product, they've kind of got those issues sorted out. So then the target audience are actually getting what they expected at the level of quality they'd expect from them as well.
Yeah, and when you have that quality assurance piece and you have that visible, right? You have this now tangible document that you can share with stakeholders. It makes it so much more worthwhile because they can visually see kind of what's going on. So how can findings from that project health audits and the Q&A reviews be effectively communicated to stakeholders to ensure that they have that alignment and buy-in?
Yeah. So communicating those findings, it's all about trying to make sure that you're really transparent and there's clarity there with the stakeholders. They want to see that there's clear audit trail, and that the health of the project's really understood as well. And one of the effective approaches to do that is to provide like a summary report on a regular basis that highlights the key findings, like where are the quality concerns. As a PMO, what do we recommend that they go back and do? Or if it's too late for future projects, what would we recommend them to do? So there'll be things that they can do right there and then, like making sure that there's a clear comms plan in place, which outlines who are the key stakeholders, what is their power and their influence, what's the messaging that needs to go out with that branding. Is there even a product description that just breaks down the artifacts of what that product looks like when it comes to the launch? And is it really clear in regards to before we press that go live button with it, have we met the original criteria in regards to what we think would have been acceptable and what our target audience would have thought was acceptable as well? Um, so presenting those sort of findings, it's just it really kind of gives another layer of kind of assurance to the sort of stakeholders that are involved, and also an opportunity to rectify any issues um, before you go live.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And really it really kind of aligns with marketing as well. There's so many things that we're talking about that are done really the same on the operation side as well as the marketing side.
Yeah, they go very hand in hand really well with each other. And sort of going back to the marketing side, so how can, like, from a marketing aspect, how can marketing prepare for those market related uncertainties, and what role does the project team play in supporting that?
Yeah, yeah, and it's really very similar, right? It's for us, I would say it's testing and having a lot of extra data available. So there's many things that we want to test whenever we do anything from a marketing perspective. And when we do that market research, we have lots of data there. And it's really important to have that backbone because in case you're in the middle of a launch or rolling something out and you need to shift gears, you don't want to have to go all the way back to the beginning and do more market research. So I always like to do a lot of market research and a lot of testing in the very beginning so that if I have to change gears midstream, I have all that data already and I don't have to jump off, back up, and go back to that piece. The other thing, project teams can really be sympathetic to change. And I think it's hard for project teams to do that because a lot of times, if there's a change, it could be in the 11th hour. And it's like, we have to make this change right now. And we got to roll it out in 48 hours. And everybody has to drop everything and do that. And I think marketing's not always as sympathetic to those changes.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, okay, the business says we need to make this change, and marketing's like, okay, I got it ready, go. And then the product team's like, but we that's a whole rewrite of this and a whole rewrite of that, and do we have the budget and where's this coming from? So I think it really is just everybody being a little sympathetic and then kind of moving forward collectively as a group.
Definitely. And it's that kind of just being really open and transparent, because like with what you said there, from like when you're working with those project frameworks and the parameters around it, if the scope changes, you're going to have to go through a whole change management process back through the governance process, depending on the size of the business or organization that you work on, to sort of get everybody to sign off on it again. Um,
Yep.
and just talking about that, obviously, going back up through like the governance process, there will be those key stakeholders that would be involved in those type of meetings as well. So what kind of challenges could arise when balancing, those stakeholder expectations between the marketing goals and project timelines?
Yeah, I think when you have marketing and then you have project timelines and any part of operations, I think you have the potential to have conflicting interests between stakeholders. Some stakeholders are going to feel a project should move in one direction, and some stakeholders are going to feel it should move in another direction. And really, how I like to work is I like to take a look at both, you know, perspectives, both interests, and then find a way to kind of marry those together so that you can come up with the best outcome to make both stakeholders happy. So conflicting interest is a big one. We also see resource constraints. A lot of companies have this medium-sized budget, but this really grand idea that they want to put out there, and the idea of what they want to create and what they want to launch isn't realistic to the budget they have. So I think that's another huge challenge. And then lack of clarity. I have a lot of people that um, they're changing their mind all the time, right? And we've got to, and that's why to very back to the first thing we talked about, at the beginning of the podcast was I like to start at the end. What is
Yeah.
the ultimate goal? Because people lose clarity on how to get there. Everybody wants to try to get there in a different way. And what I try to do is take everybody back constantly throughout the entire process of what's the end goal. This is the end goal. It doesn't really matter how we get there as long as we're accomplishing all of our goals. And just, trying to teach everyone to kind of be flexible along the way for that path.
So it's kind of like, so from like a project aspect as well, it's like that question throughout, like, well, what's the so what factor? Why were we doing this in the first place? And if we're not going to
Mhm.
be achieving what we said we were, then what's the point of wasting all this resource and time and extra budgets? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
And so many people lose sight of that mid project, you know?
definitely, yes.
All right. So, what are the most surprising operational mistakes you've uncovered during your business audits, and how do they typically impact the company's growth and efficiency?
Okay, so I think some of the most surprise mistakes that I've encountered during those business audits are quite basic, but they have really serious sort of consequences. So, like one common oversight is that lack of standardized processes and documentations. Quite often, businesses rely on kind of unwritten sort of tribal historical knowledge where employees perform tasks based on like those informal practices rather than documented procedures. So, Joe's always done this way for the past 20 years, but no one else would know it if Joe wasn't there. Joe's kind of like a single point of failure. If he's suddenly off sick long term, there is no SOP in place or standard operating procedure. If people listening are not sure what SOP is, that sort of talks somebody through this. And having those informal practices might work on like smaller scale, but as the business grows, it will lead to more inconsistencies, inefficiencies, and then it's just a really difficult, steep learning curve every time somebody new joins that organization or business. And it can really stifle the company's growth because it's hard to scale operations smoothly if it's not all in a cohesive way. And another one, which again, this has come up throughout our conversations today, is inadequate sort of communication. So where departments or different teams, or even some people in the same team, are operating in that silo way, and there isn't that cross sort of team communication. So, like sales and operations might not be on the same page, or marketing and the project team, for example, like we've spoken to today. So, communication, some places haven't got like a clear communication plan in place, and those tasks aren't divvied up, so nobody knows who's doing what. And then you've got somebody sending out completely different type of messaging to one lot of stakeholders compared to another, which then causes all sorts of problems from a buy-in perspective. And one other one I'll just touch on, which is a really big one, is that data mismanagement as well. Like, so you talked about data a little bit earlier on, but businesses not leveraging the data that they have, or they don't collect the right data to begin with, and then it really kind of inhibits their ability for informed decisions, or how to sort of track progress, or even how to understand market trends in regards to that market research on the sort of like target audience side of things. So they may seem like really small oversights that I've just said, but they can really build up to something quite big, which then impacts that productivity and profitability as well, which then really has an impact on that business, being seen as a competitor in the market of products that they may be producing.
Oh, totally, totally. And I loved your analogy about the person who has everything in their head instead of it written out on a SOP. And that, let me tell you, that happens everywhere from large corporations to small businesses with, two, three, four, five people. There's always somebody in that organization that seems to have everything in their brain, but
Yeah.
it's not documented anywhere. So what are some small, immediate changes business owners can make to improve their operations and risk management processes?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the first ones there is standardizing their processes. That's a really quick win. So, taking a look at all those sort of core tasks that you may be undertaking or that your team handles every day. Like, is there any sort of protocols? Is there any way, sort of fulfillment, maybe data or inventory management? Can we document those down in a way that everybody understands the steps? And if there's something that is amiss when that process is in flow, what is the business continuity plan for that to ensure it doesn't have a significant impact on the operations on a day-to-day aspect? And those documents, they don't have to be something really fancy. They could even be a really simple checklist can go a really long way to reduce people's errors and sort of speed up training. And then from like a risk management side, a really quick way to sort of gain control is to regularly conduct like basic risk assessments, identifying what are those top three, maybe five risks that could really have an impact and disrupt your operations. It could be anything from sort of supply chain issues to cybersecurity threats, and putting just simple mitigations in place. So like maybe data security practices, for example, from a cybersecurity aspect, or making sure that you're being compliant with like the local kind of data legislations. So it doesn't have to be a really deep down exhaustive analysis. Just even a basic plan in place will give you a stronger foundation to manage any of those kind of unexpected issues that may crop up, and they will crop up at some point.
Oh, yes.
So so from your kind of aspect, I was going to ask you a couple of other things, like from you, what are some of the surprising mistakes that you've uncovered, um, when you've sort of undertaken a business audit? From what are those sort of surprising marketing mistakes, and how do they typically impact a company's growth and efficiency?
Yeah. So I see a lot of mistakes when I am in there auditing ad accounts. So they're wanting to run Facebook ads for a launch, right? So there's three really major key things that I see that really cost extra money in ad spend, and not attracting the right client. And one is not having the right objective selected for the goal. So if you're trying to generate, more traffic into your business, or at first it really kind of depends on what kind of business are you? Are you a local business? Are
Mm,
you an online business? Do you need a traffic campaign? Do you need an awareness campaign? Or are you trying to sell something? Do you need a sales campaign? Do you need a lead campaign? But then, depending on what kind of campaign you want to run, you need to be able to have the budget for it. So if you have a very small budget, you can't just run out there and do a sales campaign, or it's going to eat through your budget, right? You've got to be smart, and we can get there to get those sales, but there's unique ways we have to position the objective in order to get there. So it's really kind of understanding how to set up that back end, and setting up that back end within like Meta Business Suites is really where I see a lot of businesses uh, fail themselves when they're running their own ads, because they're not understanding how ad cost compares to objective, and how to get them to the actual goal they want to reach.
mm,
And then the other big thing is target audiences. So you have to do your homework. You have to do your market research. You have to figure out who that target audience is. And there's a wonderful way, but it takes a lot of time to set up that target audience in the back end of Business Manager. And if you do it the right way, and not letting Facebook select your audience. If you really do your audience mining, know who your target audience is, and you really dial your messaging in and your marketing in to that audience, you will have greater success.
And do you find from that sort of business manager aspect, do you find that somewhere where a lot of people kind of fall down on just you know, is it a bit kind of overwhelming for people to sort of use that if that's something they're not used to doing?
I think so. I think it's very overwhelming because it's not that intuitive, right? You have all these options in the back end of Business Manager, and people really kind of struggle with what do I pick? So when you get overwhelmed, your first thought is just let the system choose for me, right? So people are selecting, oh yeah, let Facebook automatically do it for me. But it's okay, but you're not going to get the best results by doing that. And I think it's people either need to educate themselves more on how to do it or outsource that piece of it, right? So that it's set up properly. Because if you outsource that piece and hire somebody to do that for you, you are going to see a bigger return on your ad spend, which in the end is the end game, right? To bring in leads or awareness or
Absolutely.
whatever you're looking
Yeah.
for. Oh, so Sarah, why is it so important for businesses to align operations with marketing? And what risks do companies face if they don't?
So if I was to answer this from like with my project manager sort of hat on, so aligning those operations with marketing is really critical to ensure our project success, especially when we're talking about product launches or time-sensitive campaigns. And that alignment just really helps like the project teams to manage the timelines, the resources, and when they're on the same page, project managers can confidently plan for key milestones, knowing that both sides are aware what's happening and trying to factor in as well that comms aspect, into the overall kind of project plan, factoring in time for consultation, factoring in time for market research and the product side as well. And also, that buffer in between going live and actually into business as usual operations. And the risks of that misalignment between operations and marketing are really pronounced in areas like resource allocation, risk management, and particularly in change control. So when the teams aren't aligned, project managers often face those unexpected shifts in scope or schedule due to last minute adjustments. And that could increase all sorts of problems. There could be constraints in regards to the budget, or there could be changes that are critical in regards to the campaign or marketing timing. So it can really disrupt the timeline and affect the project sharing the same sort of resources. And sort of looking further afield as well, it has an impact on the customers at the end of the day, their satisfaction, what their opinions are in regards to the reputation of the brand that's launching the product. Um, and from a risk management perspective, that misalignment just creates a higher likelihood of you sort of receiving, which no one wants to receive once they've done a product launch, customer complaints and negative feedback, or just that resonating feedback saying, it needs to be completely reworked, and we're going to have to pull it and sort of send out a a 2.0 of it after you sort of put so much time in. You want something that's going out right the first time. So these are sort of things that the project managers want to try and avoid, and to sort of undermine, if they go against that, is it's undermining the project itself. So it's really important, from the get-go, from the sort of kick-off meeting, that operations, marketing, project managers are all kind of on the same page to establish a cohesive strategy, setting realistic expectations that they're all signed up to, and having a look at how they can reduce risks. And that just ensures there's a smoother execution, fewer surprises, and hopefully a better outcome for the business itself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, just before we call a close, so just so our listeners to know that you and I are actually going to be doing a masterclass in a few weeks' time, which I'm really excited about.
Yes,
And we'll
so
be leaving
excited.
down.
Woohoo!
It's been a work in progress, and there's going to be a link down in the description of the podcast itself, so that if you wish to get your seat, there's only limited seats there. It's free as well. And LaShall, do you want to just talk a bit from a marketing aspect, some of the sort of things that you'll be covering in the masterclass?
Yeah, yeah. So in the masterclass, which we're so excited about on Wednesday, November 6th, I'm going to be covering in great detail 12 mistakes I see it when clients are setting up their Facebook ads, Facebook and Instagram ads. So I'm going to walk through those 12 things, kind of give a lot of good tips on things you can do to kind of tweak it to help it work better. And then we'll kind of talk about some special days we have planned for the future.
And then from an operations sort of side, I mean, as we've been having this conversation, sort of operations and marketing of kind of they're very much complementary of one another, and one one needs the other and vice versa. So from an
Yep.
operations sort of perspective, I'll be talking in regards to the sort of common mistakes that I see from audits that I undertake, sort of tips and tricks you can have a look at as well for trying to implement sort of things that help and streamline and more efficiency from an operations perspective, and also the role of kind of risk management within that as well. So, yeah, really excited to sort of share what we've been working on. And as LaShall said, we will be revealing as well some special days that we'll be offering out to those that are coming along. So thank you as always for everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much, LaShall, for being a fantastic guest. We'll definitely have to get you back on another time to talk about other topics, which I'm sure that you you and I could talk about for a long time.
We could talk about
Uh,
for days. Thank
we
you so
could
much
talk
for
about
having me.
no problem. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, just to listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you want to make sure that you are aware of any new episodes, just don't forget to press that follow button so that you get notifications. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.